In Yamuna village, life flowed like the slow-moving river. Boys grew up to be farmers, fishermen, or carpenters, just like their fathers. Girls, after finishing secondary school, would marry young and start families, cooking and caring for their children. To the people of Yamuna, university was an idea as distant as the stars, a concept they had never heard of, let alone dreamed about. Education ended after secondary school, and that was enough. Parents were content as long as their children could read and write. They didn't ask for more because they didn't know more. Life was steady and unchanging, like the sun rising and setting every day. This was the way things had always been, for as long as anyone could remember. But change was brewing, unseen but inevitable, like a storm on the horizon. Yamuna's tranquil existence was about to be disrupted, though the villagers didn't know it yet. Life would never be the same again. One bright and sunny day, Yamuna village burst with excitement. From far away, a group of city students arrived for an excursion. They came with bright smiles, polished shoes, and clothes that seemed to sparkle. The villagers had never seen anything like it. The students walked with confidence, books in hand, speaking of city life in ways that seemed magical. Their voices sounded melodic to the villagers. "Look at how they walk," people whispered. "Listen to how they talk." The students shared tales of modern marvels. They spoke about machines that could build houses, simplify farming, and perform incredible feats. They demonstrated how they used such machines to study and learn. Eyes widened in amazement, and whispers of awe spread through the crowd. Even the chief, leaning on his walking stick, was stunned. He studied the students, admiration in his gaze. "This is what our children should become," he thought, the words stirring something in his heart. The whole village seemed to share his sentiment. For the first time, a daring idea took root in their minds. Could their own children go to the city and attend university? The city students stayed only briefly, but the spark they left behind lingered. They had ignited a dream. The villagers began to imagine a future where their children wore fine clothes, walked with pride, and gained the wisdom of the world beyond their small home. Under the large irako tree, the villagers gathered to discuss their newfound aspiration. Men stroked their beards in thought. Women whispered amongst themselves. Children listened with wide-eyed wonder. "We must send one of our children to the city to learn," someone declared. The idea gained momentum. But who would it be? The villagers deliberated until one name rose above the rest. Fake. Everyone nodded in agreement. Fake was no ordinary girl. Her beauty was as radiant as sunlight breaking through rain clouds. Her quick mind and kind heart were known to all. She was always helping her mother, making the elders laugh, and brightening even the dullest days. "Yes, Fake," they agreed. "She will be the one to make Yamuna proud." The decision made, the villagers came together to prepare for Fake's journey. The women packed food, dried yams, ground pepper, and a small tin of palm oil. The men pooled their money, gathering every kobo they could spare. Elders blessed her with heartfelt prayers, placing their hands on her head and whispering words of strength and protection. "Go, Fake," they said. "Remember us. Make us proud." With a small bag in hand and a heart full of hope, Fake began her journey. She glanced back only once, seeing her entire village waving, tears glistening in their eyes. On her young shoulders, she carried not just her belongings but the dreams of everyone she loved. When she arrived in the city, it was like stepping into another world. Towering buildings reached for the skies, cars sped by like restless birds, and people hurried in every direction, each with a purpose. The city was overwhelming, but Fake held her head high. School was a new challenge, but Fake adapted quickly. She studied hard, listened intently, and raised her hand eagerly in class. Teachers noticed her sharp mind, and classmates were drawn to her warm smile. Among them, she met Ashanti, a spirited girl who became her closest friend. Ashanti knew every hidden corner of the city and took Fake under her wing. She taught her where to go, what to eat, and how to navigate the city's dangers. With Ashanti by her side, Fake felt a little less lost. Yet, life in the city wasn't easy. The money from Yamuna barely covered her needs. Some nights, Fake went to bed hungry, her stomach empty but her mind full of thoughts about her village. She thought of her family, who had sacrificed so much to send her here. Fake knew she couldn't give up, not after all her village had done to send her here. Each time she felt her strength waver, she would close her eyes and think of her mother's hands packing the dried yams, of the chief standing tall with his walking stick, and of the children waving as she walked away. These memories were her anchor, the thread that held her together when everything else felt like it was unraveling. But hunger wasn't the only challenge Fake faced. The whispers and taunts from her classmates became harder to bear. She began arriving at school earlier, slipping into her seat quietly and avoiding eye contact. She stayed late after classes, burying herself in books to avoid walking the crowded hallways. Her heart grew heavier with each passing day, the loneliness pressing down on her like a weight she couldn't lift. One day, as she sat alone in the school library, Fake noticed Ashanti walk in. Ashanti's steps were light, her smile radiant as always. She sat across from Fake, pulling out her books with a casual ease that only deepened Fake's questions. "You're always so quiet these days," Ashanti said, her voice soft. "What's on your mind?" Fake hesitated, the words caught in her throat. But Ashanti's warm gaze was steady, and Fake finally let her guard down. "Ashanti," she began, her voice barely a whisper, "how do you manage? How do you make it look so easy?" Ashanti's smile faltered for a moment, a shadow passing over her face. But then she leaned forward, her voice low. "Fake," she said, "the city isn't kind to people like us. You have to find your own way to survive." Fake's brows furrowed. "But how? What do you do, Ashanti?" Ashanti sighed, leaning back in her chair. "I've told you before, a little hustle here, a little hustle there. You learn the ways of the city. Sometimes you have to bend the rules to make it through." Her words lingered in Fake's mind long after Ashanti left. What did she mean by bending the rules? Fake couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to Ashanti's life than she was letting on. But as much as she wanted to ask, she also feared the answers. The weeks dragged on, and Fake's struggles deepened. The parcels from her village, though sent with love, were never enough to sustain her. Her hunger grew relentless, and even her determination began to waver. One night, as she sat in her dimly lit room, Fake found herself staring at the small mirror on her desk. Her reflection stared back, tired and thin, her once bright eyes dulled by exhaustion. "I must not fail them," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I can't let them down." But even as she said the words, doubts crept into her heart. What if she wasn't strong enough? What if the city was too much for her? The next morning, Fake arrived at school, her mind clouded with worry. During lunch, Ashanti approached her with a bright smile. "Come with me after school," she said, her tone cheerful. "There's something I want to show you." Curious but wary, Fake agreed. When the school day ended, she followed Ashanti through the bustling streets of the city. The path wound through narrow alleys and busy marketplaces until they reached a small, dimly lit shop. Inside, Fake saw rows of sewing machines and fabrics piled high. "This is where I work sometimes," Ashanti explained. "I sew clothes for a bit of extra money. It's not much, but it helps." Fake's heart lifted slightly. This was something she could understand, something honest and tangible. "Can I work here too?" she asked, her voice hopeful. Ashanti hesitated, then nodded. "I'll introduce you to the owner. But be prepared. It's hard work." Fake threw herself into the job, her hands moving quickly over the fabric as she learned the art of sewing. The pay was meager, but it was enough to buy bread and a little fruit. For the first time in weeks, she went to bed with a full stomach. As the days turned into weeks, Fake began to regain her strength. Her focus in class returned, and the light in her eyes began to shine once more. The whispers and taunts from her classmates still hurt, but they no longer had the power to break her spirit. She was fighting for something bigger than herself, for her village, for her family, for the dreams they had entrusted to her. Ashanti watched Fake's transformation with a mixture of pride and relief. "You're stronger than you know," she said one day as they worked side by side. "The city tried to break you, but you didn't let it." Fake smiled, her heart swelling with gratitude. "I couldn't have done it without you," she said. "You showed me that even in the hardest times, there's always a way forward." And so, Fake carried on, her step steady and her spirit unyielding. She still had a long way to go, but she was determined to succeed, not just for herself, but for the village that had given her everything. In her heart, she carried their hopes, their dreams, and their unwavering belief in her. She couldn't let the village down, but her spirit was breaking, piece by piece. The nights grew colder and the city darker. The weight of her hardship pressed upon her like an invisible stone, heavy, unrelenting. Hunger gnawed at her relentlessly, a constant reminder of how far she had fallen from the hopes and dreams that had once guided her here. In the midst of the despair, Ashanti's carefree laughter echoed in her mind, a friend who seemed to have it all: easy money, hidden secrets, and no worries. Fake's heart twisted with conflicting emotions, caught between her pride and the bitter taste of helplessness. One night, as she lay on her thin mattress, her stomach empty and aching, she reached her breaking point. She couldn't ignore the clawing hunger any longer. It was no longer just discomfort. It was desperation. The next morning, with weary eyes and a heart weighed down by shame, she found Ashanti outside the school. Fake's voice trembled as she whispered, "Ashanti, please. I need to know. Let me work with you, whatever it is. I can't keep living like this." Ashanti's playful smile faded into a serious gaze, recognizing the depth of Fake's desperation. "Fake," she began cautiously, her tone uncharacteristically grave. "Are you sure? This isn't like other work, it's different." But Fake's resolve had hardened under the pressure of her circumstances. Her voice steadied, even as her hands shook. "I don't care," she said firmly. "Just show me. I have no choice." After a long silence, Ashanti finally nodded. She led Fake to a quiet corner, where the dim city lights cast faint, flickering shadows. "Listen," Ashanti said in a hushed tone, "this isn't something you share with anyone. It's a way to make money quickly, but it's not what you might expect." As Ashanti revealed the truth, Fake's heart skipped a beat, her pulse quickening with a mixture of fear and determination. This wasn't the work she had imagined. It felt foreign, dangerous, and far removed from the values of her village. Yet, the hunger, the cold, and the unending hardship left her no room to hesitate. "I'll do it," she whispered, her voice quiet but resolute. For the first time in months, a sliver of relief pierced through her despair, even as a shadow settled over her heart. Her path was changing, and she could feel it. There would be no turning back now. That night, Ashanti brought her a dress that shimmered like starlight, transforming Fake into someone almost unrecognizable. Her face was painted with colors she'd never worn before, and when she looked into the mirror, she barely recognized the girl staring back. "You look perfect," Ashanti said with a nod, her smile both reassuring and distant. Together, they ventured to a bar where lights blazed bright and music pulsed like a heartbeat. The air buzzed with laughter and conversation, strangers moving from table to table in a chaotic dance of the night. Ashanti guided Fake through it all, showing her how to talk, how to laugh, and how to charm. Nervous but determined, Fake followed every step, every whispered instruction. By the end of the night, Fake sat with a man who handed her more money than she had ever seen in her life. The coins slipped into her palm like a secret, their weight both thrilling and alien. As she walked home with her pockets full, the city lights seemed brighter, and her worries felt far away. She spent freely, buying food and small treats she'd only dreamed of tasting. For a fleeting moment, she forgot everything: her village, her promises, the hope she once carried. All she knew was the intoxicating rush of her newfound freedom, a taste of life that felt as sweet as honey. But with every step she took deeper into this dazzling, dangerous world, she was leaving behind the dreams her village had entrusted her with. She didn't realize it yet, but the gold from Ku village, sent with so much hope, was slipping through her fingers like grains of sand. Fake returned from the luxurious house of a wealthy man she had stayed with the night before. Her body felt heavy, a dull ache seeping into her bones, and her skin seemed to be burning. She reassured herself it was just a mild fever, the result of sleepless nights. It must be exhaustion, she thought, trying to dismiss the strange sensation clinging to her body like a shadow. She lay down on her modest bed, hoping sleep would wash away her frailty. But when she woke, the fatigue remained. Day by day, her body weakened further, as if her vitality was slowly being drained. Her friends noticed. Their usual laughter turned into words of concern. They brought her food, medicine, anything they thought might help, but Fake's health continued to decline. It was as though her life was slipping away drop by drop, and nothing could stop it. Then something strange happened. Her stomach began to swell. At first, she thought it was an illusion, but with each passing day, it became rounder and harder, like a clay pot. Meanwhile, her limbs grew thin and frail, her skin stretched taut over her bones. Her friends began to whisper, their faces pale with fear. "It looks like Goko," one muttered, shaking her head. "But she's eating more than ever." Fake started to worry, too. She touched her stomach, gently pressing as though trying to understand what was happening. Elsewhere on her body, her bones jutted sharply under her thinning skin, her cheeks hollow, her eyes growing distant. But her belly continued to swell, as if it contained something darker than hunger. Her friends did their best. They brought herbs, dishes, and medicines they'd heard could cure anything. They stayed by her side each day, hoping that by morning, Fake would sit up with a smile and her health restored. But no matter what they did, her condition worsened. Her skin lost its glow, her hair became dry and brittle, and her once bright eyes were now shadowed with fatigue. Time passed, and her friends exhausted every remedy. Doctors in the city shook their heads, saying there was nothing more they could do. Gradually, even her friends drifted away, fearful of what they could not understand. Fake lay there alone, feeling her life ebb away, like a river slipping through her fingers. In their desperation, her friends made a decision. "We must take her back to the village," they whispered. Resolute, they gently carried Fake, her body now as fragile as a porcelain doll. Wrapped in a blanket, they began the journey back to Kou, hoping the villagers would understand and could help her. When they arrived in the village on a misty morning, the villagers gathered, their faces lit with anticipation. For months, they had dreamed of this day, imagining Fake returning as a symbol of their pride, a strong young woman, back from the city with a radiant glow of success. But what they saw left them speechless. Fake was almost unrecognizable. Her once beautiful face was pale and gaunt, her body emaciated as though she hadn't eaten in weeks. Yet her stomach was swollen, round and incongruous with her frail figure. Her eyes were distant, as if lost in an unseen storm. The girl who had left with so much hope was now a ghost returning from the shadows. Her parents trembled as they approached, kneeling beside her frail form, tears streaming down their faces. They had sent away a vibrant, hopeful girl, but now before them lay a broken, silent, and fragile figure. The villagers surrounded Fake, their whispers a mixture of sorrow and disappointment. She lay on a simple mat in the village square, gazing at the familiar faces with heavy eyes. Finally, with trembling lips, she spoke, her voice weak but carrying the weight of countless regrets. "Life in the city was hard," she began, her eyes lowering. "The money you sent was never enough. I tried to manage, but hunger was a shadow that never left me." Her voice caught, each word cutting into her heart. "I met Ashanti, a friend who showed me how to survive, but it was a path I should never have taken. I forgot my purpose, forgot all of you, those who believed in me. I made the wrong choices." Her sobs echoed in the air as the villagers listened in silence. Tears streamed down her face, glistening like shattered hopes. An elder stepped forward, their eyes shining with deep understanding. They placed a hand on her head, their voice steady and resonant. "What you suffer is not just an illness, Fake. This is not a simple disease. You are carrying a child, conceived out of wedlock. This is the curse of our village's tradition, a punishment for breaking the sacred bond. The villagers nodded slightly, agreeing with the elder's words. They understood that Feka's ailment was not just physical, but held a deeper significance. But the elder continued, their voice softening. However, our village has faced this pain before, and we know how to heal. The path to recovery will not be easy, but if you are willing, you can become whole again. Fake looked up at the elder, her eyes filled with hope and shame. She nodded, grateful for the chance to make amends. The villagers gathered around her, ready to help. The village healers began treating her, using herbs and traditional rituals. Day by day, Feka's health slowly returned. Her belly was no longer a symbol of shame, but a sign of new beginnings. In time, Fake gave birth to a baby boy and named him Aod, meaning joy returned home. The child was not just her son, but a symbol of redemption and hope. Holding him in her arms, Fake promised to return to her studies and fulfill the dreams she and the villagers once held. Years passed, and Fake became a respected woman, admired not only for her wisdom but also for her extraordinary resilience. When she returned to the city, this time with a clear purpose, she was no longer a lost girl, but a beacon of strength. The villagers celebrated her journey, and Feka's story was passed down through generations as a reminder. Even in the darkest times, there is always a light to guide us home.